I pulled into the long-term parking lot at O'Hare International Airport, buzzing with excitement to surprise my son for his birthday. It was supposed to be a celebration. I had flown in from Seattle specifically for this occasion. But as I walked through the rows of parked vehicles, something caught my eye, a silver Honda Civic with heavy condensation fogging up the windows. Inside, I saw movement. I walked closer, and my heart nearly stopped in my chest. It was my son. My son, David, was sleeping in the back seat with his twin boys, Leo and Sam, curled up beside him under a single, thin blanket. They were sleeping in an airport parking lot in the dead of March. I knocked on the window, hard. David's eyes shot open, wide with panic. For a moment, he just stared at me through the glass, and I saw something I'd never seen in my son's face before. Pure shame. He opened the door, slowly, careful not to wake the boys. "Dad?" he whispered, his voice hoarse and cracked. "What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" I couldn't keep my voice steady. "David, what the hell is going on? Where's the house? Where's Jessica? Why are you living in your car with my grandsons?" He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "It's complicated," he mumbled. "Complicated?" I snapped. "You are sleeping in a parking lot with 5-year-old children in freezing temperatures." The boys started to stir. Leo rubbed his eyes and saw me standing there. "Grandpa?" His little voice broke something inside my chest. "Hey, buddy," I said, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "Why don't you and Sam come with Grandpa to get some breakfast? Your dad and I need to have a serious talk." An hour later, the boys were happily eating pancakes at a diner near the terminal, while David and I sat at a separate table. He looked thin, exhausted, and completely defeated. "Tell me everything," I demanded. He took a shaky breath and stared at his coffee. "Jessica left me 3 months ago," he began. "But it's not just that she left, Dad. She took everything. The house, the bank accounts, the business operating capital, all of it." "What do you mean, all of it?" I asked, confused. "The house was in both your names. She had me sign papers a year ago," he explained. "She said it was for tax purposes, to put the deed in her name only. I trusted her, so I signed. Then one day I came home from work, and the locks were changed. There was a restraining order taped to the door. Her lawyer claimed I was mentally unstable and dangerous. They said I had been threatening her." "That's insane," I said, gripping the table. "You have never been violent a day in your life." "I know," he said, tears forming in his eyes. "But she had evidence, Dad. Or at least, her lawyer said she did. Text messages I supposedly sent, emails, witnesses who claimed they'd seen me acting erratic. Her parents backed up every single word. They painted a picture of me as this unstable, controlling monster, and the judge believed them." "What about the money?" I asked. "The $150,000 I invested in your startup?" David's face crumbled. "Gone. She was the one managing the business accounts. The day before she left, she transferred every cent to an investment account belonging to her father. She claimed it was a repayment for a legitimate business loan we'd discussed. I have no proof otherwise because she handled all the paperwork, and the custody hearing for the boys was 2 weeks ago. I lost. I only get supervised visitation twice a week. The rest of the time, they are with her and her parents. The court said I needed to prove stable housing and employment first. But I can't get stable housing without money, and Jessica made sure I have nothing. I've been working, but I'm barely making enough for food and this parking spot. I shower at the gym. The boys think we're on a camping adventure. I felt a rage building in my chest, a cold, hard rage I hadn't felt since my wife died. "Where are you supposed to have these supervised visits?" I asked. "At her parents' house, with her mother supervising," he said bitterly. "It's humiliating. They watch every interaction and take notes. I can't even hug my own sons without feeling like I'm being judged. This ends now, I said firmly. Pack up your car. You and the boys are coming to stay at my hotel until we figure this out. Then, we are going to fix this. Dad, you don't understand, he pleaded. Her family has money. Her father, Charles Sterling, is a major real estate developer. They have lawyers, expensive lawyers. I can't fight them. Maybe you can't, I said, standing up, but we can. That night, after the boys were asleep in the hotel room, I sat at the desk and started making calls. First, I called my lawyer in Seattle, Alan Wright, whom I'd known for 30 years. Then, I called an old friend, Detective Karen Miller, with the Chicago PD, who owed me a favor from years back when I'd helped her son get into college. Alan, I need you to recommend the best family lawyer in Illinois, I said. Money is not an issue. What is going on, Robert? Alan asked. I told him everything. When I finished, there was a long pause on the line. This smells like fraud, Alan said. The business account transfers, the forged documents, the coordinated testimony. If what David says is true, this isn't just a custody dispute. This is organized theft. You need someone who handles both family law and financial crimes. He gave me a name, Catherine Ross. She was one of the top lawyers in Chicago, specializing in high-conflict custody cases with financial abuse components. Her retainer was expensive, but I didn't care. The next morning, I met with Catherine. She was in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that instantly put me at ease. Tell me everything, she said, and I mean everything. Don't leave out details you think are insignificant. I recounted Dee's story, trying to keep my emotions in check. She took notes rapidly, asked pointed questions, and then leaned back in her chair. Here's what we are dealing with, Catherine said. Your son's ex-wife and her family have executed what we call financial coercive control, combined with parental alienation. They have systematically stripped him of resources, credibility, and access to his children. The text messages, the witnesses, the mental health accusations. This is a playbook, Robert. I've seen it before. Can we prove it? I asked. That depends, she replied. Do you have any documentation from the business? Bank statements, emails, anything? I have the wire transfer confirmations from when I invested the money, I said, and emails from David about the business plan. But Jessica handled most of the day-to-day accounts. That's a start, she nodded. What about David's mental health? They are claiming he is unstable. Does he have any medical records proving otherwise? He was seeing a therapist last year, I remembered, not because he was unstable, but because work was stressful. He was trying to manage the pressure of the startup properly. Catherine's eyes lit up. That is actually incredibly helpful. Therapy records showing he was proactively managing stress prove the exact opposite of their claims. We need those records immediately. We also need to conduct a forensic accounting analysis of the business accounts. If money was transferred out improperly, we will find it, and we need to depose the witnesses who claimed David was unstable. I guarantee their stories won't hold up under scrutiny. How long will this take? I asked. Months, maybe longer, she warned. Family court moves slowly. But in the meantime, we can file an emergency motion to modify the custody arrangement. If we can show that the boys are in a stable environment with you and David, and that Jessica obtained custody through fraudulent means, we might be able to get temporary joint custody while the case proceeds. Do it, I said. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a man on a mission. I rented a 3-bedroom apartment in the suburbs, fully furnished, and enrolled Leo and Sam in a local school. David got a job with a tech company thanks to a former colleague who believed in him. I made it my job to build the case. I drove to David's old workplace and talked to his former team. Every single one of them was shocked by the accusations. David, unstable? Asked Mike, his former business partner. That's absurd. He was the calmest person in the room during a crisis. Jessica was the volatile one. I remember her screaming at him in the office once just because he had to work late. Would you be willing to testify to that? I asked. Absolutely, Mike said. I tracked down the therapist, Dr. Emily Chen. She couldn't share David's records without his consent, but David signed the release immediately. When Dr. Chen provided her notes, they painted a clear picture of a man dealing with normal work stress, using healthy coping mechanisms, with zero signs of instability or aggression. Then, I started digging into Jessica's family. Her father, Charles Sterling, was a respected developer in the city. On the surface, everything looked legitimate. But my detective friend, Karen, did some deep checking. Robert, she said over the phone a few days later, Charles Sterling has been investigated twice by the IRS for suspicious large cash deposits. No charges were ever filed, but there are red flags. And get this, 3 years ago, a business partner sued him for fraud. The case was settled out of court, and the records were sealed. Can we use that? I asked. Depends on what your lawyer can dig up, she said, but it establishes a pattern. Catherine hired a forensic accountant named Stephen Lee. It took him 3 weeks, but he traced every dollar of David's business accounts. What he found was damning. The $150,000 I had invested had been transferred to an account belonging to Charles Sterling, labeled as a business loan repayment. But there was no loan agreement, no terms, no repayment schedule, nothing in writing. Just a transfer made the day before Jessica filed for the restraining order. More transfers followed over 14 months. Jessica had systematically moved money from the business account to personal accounts, and then to her father's accounts. Small amounts at first, 500 here, 1,000 there, then larger sums. By the end, she had transferred nearly $280,000. This isn't a marital dispute, Stephen said, showing me his report. This is embezzlement. She was draining the business while maintaining the appearance of normalcy, and her father was complicit. Can David get the money back? I asked. If we can prove fraud, yes, Catherine answered, but it will require criminal charges, not just civil court. This is beyond family law. Catherine filed the motions. First, an emergency motion to modify custody, presenting evidence that David now had stable housing and employment. She included the fact that the boys had been living with us for a month, thriving in school and seeing their pediatrician regularly. She presented Dr. Chen's records, effectively demolishing the mental instability claims. She presented testimony from David's colleagues, proving Jessica's accusations were false. Jessica's lawyer, a slick guy named Richard Stone, fought back hard. He claimed David was only stable now because I was bankrolling everything. He argued that it wasn't sustainable and that the boys needed their mother. But Catherine was relentless. She deposed Jessica's witnesses one by one. Their stories fell apart almost immediately. Jessica's friend Ashley, who claimed she had seen David act erratically at a party, admitted under oath that she had only heard about it from Jessica and hadn't actually witnessed anything. Jesse, Ika's neighbor, who claimed David had shouted threats, admitted he had never actually heard the words, just saw David looking angry through a window. The supervised visits became our strongest evidence. I attended several with David. Jessica's mother, Barbara Sterling, sat in the corner with a notebook, writing constantly. But what she didn't know was that David had started recording the audio of every visit on his phone. It was legal, since it was in a shared space with consent posted on the wall. What the recording showed was undeniable. The boys were happy, well-adjusted, and excited to see their father. They called him Dad, unprompted, hugged him, and told him about school. There was zero fear, zero hesitation. They were normal kids with their normal father. But Barbara's notes painted a completely different picture. Father appeared agitated, she wrote. Children seemed withdrawn. Father's tone was aggressive. All lies. All documented lies, directly contradicted by the audio recordings. Catherine submitted the recordings to the court with a motion to end supervised visitation, arguing that the supervision was being weaponized to create false evidence. Then came the forensic accounting report. Stephen had traced every fraudulent transfer. Catherine didn't just submit it to family court. She submitted it to the fraud division of the police department and to the IRS. Charles Sterling was now under investigation for tax evasion and fraud. Jessica was facing potential criminal charges for embezzlement. The custody hearing was scheduled for July, 6 months after I had found my son in that parking lot. The courtroom was tense. Jessica sat with her parents and her lawyer, looking confident and poised. David sat with me and Catherine, looking nervous but determined. The judge was Justice Margaret Holloway, a woman in her 60s with a reputation for being thorough and fair. Catherine presented our case methodically. She laid out the forensic accounting, the false accusations, the contradictory witness testimony, and the audio recordings proving the supervised visits were manipulated. She presented Dr. Chen's records and proof of David's stable employment and housing. Richard Stone tried to discredit everything. He argued that David's stability was a facade funded by my money. He argued that the boys needed their mother and that they had been thriving in Jessica's care. Then, Catherine called Jessica to the stand. Mrs. Sterling, Catherine began, you testified that you transferred funds from the business account to your father's account as a business loan repayment. Is that correct? Yes, Jessica said smoothly. Where's the loan agreement? It was a verbal agreement, she replied. A verbal agreement for $150,000? Catherine asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, Jessica said. My father was helping us during a difficult time. Why was it difficult? Catherine pressed. According to bank records, the business was profitable. Revenue was strong. Jessica hesitated. David was spending recklessly. On what? I don't know. He handled expenses. Catherine pulled out bank statements. These records show that David's personal spending was consistent and modest, she said, holding them up. Rent, groceries, utilities, transportation. Meanwhile, your personal credit card statements show charges at high-end restaurants, boutiques, and spa services totaling over $30,000 in 6 months. Would you call that reckless spending? I deserve to enjoy the success of the business, Jessica snapped. Was it your business, or was it a joint venture with your husband, funded by his father's investment? It was joint, she admitted quietly. Then why did you transfer the funds without his knowledge or consent? He knew, she lied. Catherine pulled out phone records. Your phone records show no calls or texts to David on the day of the transfer, she said. No discussion. The transfer happened at 9 a.m. David was at a client meeting across town. How did he know? Jessica's face flushed. I don't remember the exact details. Convenient, Catherine said dryly. Let's talk about the mental health accusations. You claimed David sent threatening text messages. Where are these messages? I deleted them, Jessica said quickly. I was afraid. You were afraid, so you deleted the evidence? But you kept screenshots to show your lawyer? Yes. The screenshots you provided have been analyzed by a digital forensics expert, Catherine stated. They show signs of manipulation. Timestamps don't align with phone records. Message threads are incomplete. In fact, The metadata shows these images were created on a computer, not captured from a phone. Would you like to explain that? Richard Stone objected, but the judge overruled him. Jessica stammered. I don't know. Maybe my phone was acting up, or maybe these messages were fabricated. The courtroom went silent. Catherine continued. You also claimed David was mentally unstable. Yet Dr. Chen's records, which we have submitted, show no signs of instability. In fact, they show a man proactively managing normal work stress. Were you aware of these records when you made your accusations? No, Jessica whispered. Did you ever encourage David to see a therapist? No. So you claim he was unstable, but you never encouraged him to get help? And when he did get help on his own, you used it against him? Jessica didn't answer. Catherine turned to the judge. Your Honor, what we have here is a deliberate, coordinated effort to destroy a father's relationship with his children while stealing his financial resources. The evidence is overwhelming. Fraudulent financial transfers, fabricated text messages, false accusations, manipulated supervised visit reports. Jessica Sterling and her family have weaponized the family court system for financial gain. Richard Stone stood up. Your Honor, my client, she made mistakes, but her primary concern has always been the welfare of her children. Catherine shot back immediately. If her primary concern was the children, why did she allow them to believe their father abandoned them? Why did she restrict his contact? Why did she create an environment where those boys thought their dad didn't want them? The audio recordings show children who love their father, who are happy to see him. That is not the behavior of children who have been protected from an unstable parent. That is the behavior of children who have been lied to. Justice Holloway looked at Jessica for a long moment. Mrs. Sterling, she said, I have reviewed all the evidence. The forensic accounting, the digital analysis, the witness testimony, the audio recordings. I find it deeply troubling that you have made serious accusations against your ex-husband without credible evidence. I find it even more troubling that funds were transferred out of a jointly owned business without proper documentation or consent. She turned to David. Mr. Miller, I have also reviewed Dr. Chen's records and your current living situation. You have stable employment, stable housing, and your sons are clearly thriving in your care. I see no evidence of the instability claimed by your ex-wife. She picked up her gavel. I am ordering an immediate modification of custody. Joint legal custody will be shared equally between both parents. Physical custody will be split 50-50, with both parents having equal parenting time. Supervised visitation is terminated. Mr. Miller will have unsupervised access to his children, effective immediately. Jessica gasped. Her mother stood up in the gallery. Your Honor, this is outrageous. Sit down, Mrs. Sterling, the judge commanded. I am not finished. I am also ordering that Jessica Sterling repay the sum of $280,000 to David Miller, representing funds improperly transferred from the bus, INS account. If repayment is not made within 90 days, I will authorize the seizure of assets. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal prosecution. This court does not take kindly to fraud. She struck the gavel. We are adjourned. David's knees buckled. I caught him before he fell. He was crying, not sad tears, but tears of pure relief. Outside the courtroom, Leo and Sam ran to him. They had been in a waiting room with a social worker. David dropped to his knees and hugged them both, holding them like he would never let go. Daddy, are we going home? Leo asked. Yeah, buddy, David choked out. We are going home. 3 months later, Charles Sterling was charged with fraud and tax evasion. Jessica herself faced charges of embezzlement. Her lawyer negotiated a plea deal where she would repay the money and avoid jail time in exchange for a guilty plea on lesser charges. The money came back. Most of it, anyway. Legal fees had eaten a significant chunk, but David had enough to restart. He launched a new business, this time with ironclad contracts and a lawyer reviewing every single document. Leo and Sam split their time between both parents, but David had them more often than not. Jessica had visibly checked out, seeming more interested in salvaging her own social standing than being a mother. I decided to stay in Chicago. I rented a condo near David's place so I could be close to them. I see my grandsons 3 times a week. We go to the park, I help with their homework, and I am teaching them to play chess. One evening, about a year after that day in the parking lot, David and I were sitting on my balcony while the boys played inside. He looked at me, his expression serious. "I never thanked you properly," he said. "You don't need to thank me," I replied. "Yes, I do," he insisted. "If you hadn't shown up that day, if you hadn't helped me fight, I would still be living in my car. Or worse, I would have lost my boys forever." "You are my son," I said simply. "That is what fathers do." He was quiet for a moment, looking out at the city skyline. "I thought I had lost everything," he whispered. "My wife, my home, my business, my kids. I thought I was the problem. That maybe I really was unstable, and everyone else could see it except me." "You were never the problem," I told him firmly. "They wanted you to think that." That is how manipulators work. They make you doubt your own reality. "I know that now," he said. "But for months, I believed it. The court believed it. Everyone believed it except you." "I know my son," I said, reaching over to squeeze his shoulder. "I have known you since the day you were born. I know who you are, and you are not what they tried to make you out to be." He nodded slowly. We sat in silence, watching the sun set over Chicago. "Dad?" he said after a while. "Yeah? Thank you." I smiled. "You would have done the same for your boys," he smiled back. "I would, because I learned it from you." Inside, Leo called out, "Grandpa, come play Jenga with us." I stood up. "Duty calls." I chuckled. David laughed. "Go on," he said. "I'll order pizza." I walked inside to where my grandsons were building a precarious tower of wooden blocks on the coffee table. Leo looked up at me and grinned. "Grandpa, don't let it fall." I sat down carefully on the floor. "I won't, buddy," I promised. "I won't let anything fall." And I meant it. Not just the tower, not just this moment. I meant all of it. This family, these boys, my son. I would protect them no matter what. Because that is what family does. We don't let each other fall. Looking back, I realized that the parking lot wasn't just a low point for our family. It was a turning point. It stripped away the pretenses and forced us to see who was really in our corner. We are stronger now because of it. The boys are growing up knowing that truth matters, and that no matter how dark it gets, there is always a way back to the light if you have the right people beside you. David built a new life, not on money or status, but on integrity. And I got the best retirement gift a man could ask for, a front row seat to watch my grandsons grow into men who will know the difference between price and value. So, if you ever find yourself staring into the cold window of a car in a parking lot, wondering how it all went wrong, remember this. The story isn't over. It is just time to turn the page. Because as long as you have family, you have everything.